you know, the expression never again, how is it possible that human beings could stand by as 1.5 million children were killed? How is that? How can a person be a human being and have been a bystander or anything in the Holocaust? Around the year 1900, my grandfather was living in Galicia, and things were not very friendly for Jews. They were having a hard time as a family. The family was having a hard time, and he had a whole bunch of children, ended up with 11, and was looking for a safe haven. And they found one. They moved to Hanover, Germany, and they were welcomed there. They started a business which was successful. They had very many friends, many of them Christians, and they didn't feel any of the hatred that they'd left behind. And then a depression came, and people were out of work, and trains weren't running, businesses were not, a little bit like what's happening here. But what happened then? Did the people then all get together and say, let's all work together? No, a party came along and said, what we're going to do is if you elect us in the upcoming free and democratic election, we're going to make Germany great again. We're going to point out and have everybody understand that German people are superior, they're better than everybody else, and everybody's going to be working and everybody's going to be proud. And the good people in Germany, one by one, they started listening and supporting. Then as they came out with more of their agenda of how they were going to get rid of people with disabilities, because German people were way beyond that. Everybody was a Superman, and how they were going to get rid of one group and another group and get rid of the Jews because of this and that. And many people who didn't agree with that at all continued. They said, well, they supported it because business was going to be good. They were going to be making more money. And the ones who didn't support it, they were very quiet. And where that was noted most was my father had moved to a small town in the Ruhr Valley, and we had a small clothing store, and we lived in a little apartment above it. And one by one, people, our friends, stopped coming. My father had to put a J in the window for Jude, Jew, and he saw business going slower and slower. I have memories of him looking at the empty cash registers. We wondered where we were going to go. So the obvious question is, well, you see all this was going on. Why did you just sit there? Why didn't you get in your car and go someplace, get out of there? And it happens that, first of all, we didn't know anybody who had a car. And secondly, there was no place to go because every door in the world had been closed. Yes, some people were able to get out on tourist visas and they were able to leave. We were not. And my sister, who'd had so many friends, our apartment and store always full of her Christian friends, they all disappeared one by one. On October the 17th, 1938, that was 2 weeks before Kristallnacht, um, an officer came into the store and said, report to the police station with your family, small suitcase. And I remember my father took us to our one remaining Christian friends and said, what do we do? Well, there was no way, there was no place to go, there was no place to run. And this was a Thursday, and they kept us at the train station in Dortmund uh, until the sun went down on Friday. Why? Well, I can't be, my feeling is that some people, like my Zeta, were very pious, and this was another way of heaping uh, pain on us. And I do have a beautiful memory of my Zeta starting the Friday night's prayers with the idea in the train to break the tension. When we got to the Polish border, we were herded out. We were chased towards the border. The Polish guards tried to keep us out. Between that day and the day before, there was 17,000 of us, and they weren't able to keep us out. And we were in Poland, and we were penniless refugees. And whenever I see news about refugees on board, those memories come back to me, especially when some Polish peasants came to offer help and took the suitcases and left and stole them, and left people with nothing. We walked to the closest town, which was Spanien, which had a small Jewish population. And I was 6 years old at the time, but I do remember that nobody welcomed us, but there was more of us than there were of them, and there was no real hostility. We were not harassed. We were not in fear of our lives. They let people sleep in the stables. They let people sleep in the streets. We got to a burnt out building, and was a mill, and we were on the fourth floor there for the next 10 months. There was no facilities of any kind. I remember my mother got a tub so we could have water up there, a barrel. But this was not a horrible time for me. As a kid, I had my family, and I had my brother, I had a friend, and HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, came, and they got us cotton bags that we could put straw in, so we were not sleeping on the ground or on the floor. And the community, together with aid organizations, quickly organized. And I know my mother and my sister were active in making sure that people had food to eat. And during those 10 months, some people who had connections on the outside, or who had money, were able to get to Shanghai. To America was an impossibility because there was an iron gate to keep enemy aliens out, meaning Jews, and the British Empire kept everybody out. As a matter of fact, people trying to get to Palestine, one of the boats was actually sunk, and they put the people in internment camps. But at the end of 10 months, the German army was on the border, and with a lot of chaos and anxiety, we went to the railway station. They were going to try to get us to Grodno, away from the border, because the German army was going to be coming over, and there were all kinds of rumors about what would happen. And at the train station, I remember what happened. My friend started screaming, and his mother took him and went away with her. And my parents pushed me over to somebody who said they were going to try to get us on a kinder transport, which was really finished at that point. This was at the end of August in 1939. And for the next 10 days, I was with him. And when I hear about children being separated at the border, the memories of me being separated from my parents there, that was absolutely the worst day of my life. And it took me half of my lifetime to get over that. And we spent 10 days going across Poland, and we got to Danzig, and my sister had joined us on the way, and my brother was with me. And my sister was 14, and somebody at the boat said she's too old, and they didn't let her on. And I tried to get away, and my sister dragged me onto the boat. And that was the last time I ever saw my sister. I later found out that she had managed to get to Grodno, and she was had a job, and she was studying English, and she was with my parents, and my mother, my father, my sister, and my Zeta were all murdered in Auschwitz. This is, I found out much later, and I got to England. When I got to England again, what is a refugee kid, a 7-year-old, what happens to him? Well, in England, my brother was taken in by a Jewish family who had a son their age, and I was very angry, and I was a problem to everybody, and I spent the first 3 years going from one place to the other, and eventually I was taken in by a nice Christian family, and I'm still in touch with their grandchildren. The thing which really stuck out to me, though, was there I was in trouble all the time. There was always somebody reaching out to me, somebody who heard about me, the vicar's wife, and a few other people. And I once went to a reunion, and somebody said, can you give us a headline in 2 minutes? I said, my story in 2 minutes. I said, okay, I would like to thank Mrs. Knowles and a few others for how they helped me. And the guy took out a phone and said, talk. I wasn't thinking, it was 70 years later. And it was the daughter of Winton Knowles. And I asked the man, how come that he had the phone number, and said, because she's always helping. And she helped a lot of the kids. And they were all, talking about her. And my whole life, I've had the feeling that when I can help somebody, I think of my sister, and I think of Mrs. Knowles and the other people who helped me. If anybody has any questions, I'd gladly answer them.
It's been an honor to listen to your story. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so happy that we got to meet you. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. Where do you live now? And I saw someone else in the background. Who else do you live with?
I live in Jackson, New Jersey, and I have one fabulous family, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and and I get the greatest joy when I hear any of them about any of them helping anybody else or working with kids, and I get a lot of joy in my life when but the word refugees and people at the border is something which haunts me, and I did, together with my wife Annabelle, we did walk across the border into Mexico and meet some of the refugees and the children, and I felt a kinship with them. I think that we have so many refugees in the world today, probably more than ever, and I understand that in our present situation, our real job is to try to work together to overcome the virus and what's happening to people who don't have medical care. I think all of us need to be more active to make a difference in the world, and I'm never satisfied with my level of, I don't do enough. I got to do more.
You're a very special person for going through everything you did and continuing to feel the way you do. I think we are all learning so much from you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for answering my question. One more question. Where did you move to after the war? And where's your accent from?
Well, after the war, me and my brother, we were ardent Zionists who were going to, here I was 14 years old, and I had to move to Palestine to make a home for the Jewish people. And I had a grandfather there, and he said, "You're not coming to Palestine, you're going to America, whether you like it or not, because you have an aunt there who really wants you." And so my uncle, I've done all kinds of things in my life. One of my favorite things was when I did dozens and dozens of workshops in prisons, alternative to violence. And my uncle didn't know what that word meant. And he was in a camp in Holland, and he saw a pregnant woman getting kicked in the stomach. And he went and he knocked the guard unconscious. They knocked him unconscious. They beat him up very badly and put him on a train to be taken to his death. And I didn't hear this story from him. I heard it from others. And this was in Holland. And Holland was not a good place, but they did have an underground. They did have people who cared, and they heard about it. They got him off the train, and they took him to Jaak Pendrick, who was a printer, who needed to do something to make a difference. There were always a very small amount of individuals who had to make a difference. And he was printing phony documents for 1,200 Jewish young men, saying that they were on a mission for the Nazis and they were to give them free travel wherever they went. And with those papers, he was able to get my aunt and him, and they went from Holland to France and got to Africa, and in 1942 arrived in the United States. And if they would have seen at Ellis Island that my aunt had stomach typhus, which was common in the camps, they would not have let her in, but they didn't. By the way, my brother, they wouldn't have let him in 1946 because he spent 5 months in the hospital because he had got no medical, hadn't seen a doctor in all those years. And they both worked in sweatshops and made $1,500 they saved up, and they got a loan from the Jewish Agricultural Society and got a chicken farm in Farmingdale, New Jersey, and together with several thousand other refugees. And in 1946, they brought me to the farm. So that was me in America.
Thank you very much for your very different story. Thank you so much. It's very positive and a different story that I've heard before.
What I do when I speak to kids, I tell them you don't have to ask a question at the end. Anybody who doesn't ask a question needs to write an essay with questions in it. So you all have a task.
Hi, thank you for sharing your story. It's been amazing. And I have a question for you. How did you keep your faith through everything you've been through while you were traveling and during the Holocaust? And even up to today, how did your faith keep prevailing? So, my name is Sarah. Thank you.
So I spent the first years in Christian homes, and I was one very angry kid, very angry, got into a lot of trouble. And the one thing, I had lost everything that I was going to lose. And if anybody talked to me about not being Jewish, there was no way they were going to get through to me. So to me, that was the first thing. And as far as I'm sometimes asked, you know, about my belief in God, and I totally believe in the God that's in my heart and in my soul and in me, and I think it's up to us to make the world a better place, and that's what the word God means to me.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Hi, do you accept visitors?
I'm getting static.
It's from my phone.
Hi, I just asked if you accept visitors.
Do I accept visitors? Sure.
After Corona, of course.
No, I worked with a friend who died from the virus, and which was very sad for me. And I've been keeping myself isolated, and it is not easy because I'm a hyperactive kid who needs all kind of activities, and but I'm managing.